The eco score, we see the Nutri-Score definitely being used more and more across Europe. So this is another proposal and another label that can capture some of that. But also just looking at what companies want to communicate themselves. And one example here is carbon emission communication. We've seen a 56% increase in a year on packages that have a claim. If you go back, gosh, it must be 10 or 12 years now, there was a lot of discussion around carbon footprint, and some of it was being measured, in grams and so on. And it was really difficult to understand. The no carbon milk here is from Brazil. And there's a really nice story around how they do it. It's through regenerative agriculture. They're doing offset through growing trees. There's a lot of activities around to promote animal welfare and so on. So again, we think there'll be a lot more measured efforts as well, and something to communicate around that. Our second trend is around plant-based. So we're not just now mimicking meat, mimicking milk, but plant-based has really become a canvas for innovation. And I think, a couple of things to note on this. We do a trend series called Taste the Trend every year, and we just put a little timeline there that we've been talking about this for 4 years, and we've seen a big shift. And now we think we really are going to see a major shift in terms of the types of products that we see made. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but maybe what's even more important to think about is on the bottom left, we ask consumers, again, across all the same countries, for what reasons would you consider plant-based? And you can see health is number 1 there, but you can see also the planet shifted a position, and it went from 3 to 2 in this case. So in 2021, it's healthier, it's better for the planet, it adds variety to my diet, and it also represents my values and beliefs. That'll be another theme that I talk about today. You don't see taste there. So that also represents an opportunity. But again, I don't want to say this is the number 1 purchase driver for every consumer. It's not that. But as we hear more and more about plant-based, more and more about the environment, consumers are going to be thinking about it. And it's going to be from high-end grocery stores also to the discounters. Consumers are aspirational, so maybe some of this stuff might be, priced out of the market for some consumers now, but the aspiration will be there, and it will trickle down in many different ways. In the discounters, we see, we've seen organic, we've seen communication about fair farming and lots of super premium products. So this will continue to spread into more mainstream consumer groups. The last thing to mention on this slide, also, it's a global trend. If you haven't been following what Omni's been doing, they've now launched a new Omni Seafood series. It was launched on World Oceans Day, but that's also really interesting. We're seeing a lot of innovation in different formats as well. This is where I mentioned some of the opportunities that consumers are really looking for quality. I will never forget it as long as I live. In college in the late 80s, my roommate and I ordered a package of health food, and I'll never forget, it was really like cardboard. It was our sawdust. It was really terrible. But we still see that a third of consumers say they would not consider buying 100% plant-based alternatives because of poor taste and texture. It's still an opportunity. It wasn't in the top 4 reasons that consumers want to buy plant-based. But what we do see changing is we are seeing quite rapid growth in plant-based products that have a premium or indulgent claim, things like desserts, more indulgent ice cream types of products, and so on. Roquette has announced that they are going to be working more around gastronomy. I actually saw this in my news feed yesterday, that there are more and more chefs working on very high-end plant-based and vegan menus. So that will also change what we think about the options of this. I also read that 40% of the meat that Americans consume is whole muscle meats, things like pork chops and steaks and so on. So trying to create whole muscle cuts of, if it's fish or other types of meat, will also be really important, but it will have to deliver on taste and texture. Tech to table. So Yeah, it's clearly having an impact in many different ways on the food industry. We took a very broad definition of technologies here, but you can see that 40% of consumers say, I'm more open to new technologies now that I have seen where it's plant-based innovation. And again, this can be in products that are commercializing new types of products like the cellular-based foods that you can see mentioned there on the left. Protein derived from air, that's been a very sensational news story over the past year or so, but also things that make it very personal for consumers, ways that I can track, I can measure many different things, if it's personalized nutrition or if it's the way I shop and so on. But tech has definitely become something that really drives food from consumption, but also from conception, but also to consumption. We also think that myths and miscommunication will continue to decline. There's still a lot of it, but again, it's all becoming a lot more transparent, and tech will continue to drive changes. You can see here 50% of consumers have also told us that I believe that cell-based technologies can be the future of the food industry. Again, as people hear more about it, learn more about it, celebrities are helping to also drive the conversation. Leonardo DiCaprio has been a very high-profile investor in some of the newer technologies, including Mosameat, which was the first cellular-based company. And after that, we're going to move on to shifting occasions. So the pandemic has certainly reshaped our eating occasions. It's also created new ones. And now consumers expect more going out. So we've had some really interesting experiences eating at home for the past 18 months. So we made a little matrix here to just highlight some of the things that we're seeing. If we look at out of home and food service, well, there's news stories every day about a shortage of people to work in restaurants, but also the safety. So we're seeing a lot more things like kiosks and so on, order by phone and pickup. Also enhancing at-home experience with restaurant branded products. You can see an example there from Taco Bell, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Starbucks, and also Krispy Kreme. And again here, 50% of consumers tell us they want to try out new delivery concepts, if it's drone or if it's some of the really quick delivery and so on. So there's a lot of room for, still a lot of room for innovation there. And then the last example that we have there in the top right is also brand collaborations, products that, you know, started in retail or available in retail, but also become very popular through out of home. So it's definitely, there's definitely a shift. One of the other interesting aspects of this is that consumers are also looking for elevated eating experiences. And we just picked out a few examples here. One is, this is a sushi restaurant, which will rent out a little conveyor belt for some diners. I don't know who would not want to do that. And again, just to highlight again that how many consumers are now expecting companies, brands, restaurants to enhance social interactions after being at home. And there's lots of different ways to do that. In the Netherlands, Jumbo is one of the biggest supermarket chains. They are cooperating with an NGO to encourage people behind the checkout to chat with customers to prevent loneliness or to help with that. Here's a company also that is allowing you to buy a round for your friends when you can't be there. So again, there's always something extra to be added to an eating experience. The fifth trend is voice of the consumer. So you can see this is probably one of the biggest consumer responses that we got. 75% say a company should listen to consumers more when they're developing products, flavors, or strategies. Saturday I was at the grocery store. I think it's the first time I've seen a very elaborate point of sale display. It was actually a package stuck to the chill case window, and there was a little sticker that you could vote on a flavor. You couldn't miss it when you were opening the door. The European Institute of Innovation and Technology have also created a program where they're really trying to get a lot of different stakeholders, including young people, to join together to start to shape what's happening in the food sector. And you can see here, 64% of young people would like to pursue a career to improve food innovation. Food is so, just so on trend. I was having dinner with a group of parents from our school last week, and there was a lawyer, and she said, oh my gosh, the opportunities in food. And she was interested also for her kids that were studying in university. So it's not surprising that many people are just very engaged in what's happening in the food sector. We have some nice examples of this. Again, I've been talking about it almost all year, that it's not about educating consumers anymore, it's about a conversation. So here's a company that actually put the phone number on the front of the package. If you need us, text us. Again, lots of voting and things have been going on for a long time, but again, you can see here, consumers can help to decide which flavors stay. And I think one of the most interesting examples here is that Nestle had a very uncomfortable experience around palm oil. So now they've created a questionnaire, you can see, and using that criticism as a conversation starter and presenting some of this to consumers to just say it's not easy to do it. I think one of my own, I don't know if I want to call it a pet peeve or an issue, is that everybody thinks there's a simple answer to everything. I think we see so much communication on social media that's in sound bites. The news is in sound bites. We watch lots of short videos, and you can't present a big, complicated discussion there, and people don't have the attention span to, we could put it in air quotes, do research. So a lot of it is very superficial. I think even a lot of the lists that we've seen that, this is more sustainable than that. Well, things like digestibility of protein or quality of protein and things are also not always, factored in with a lot of these, top 10 most sustainable this or that kind of list. So I think it's really interesting that Nestle is now being very brave to start a conversation and just to present some of the complexities to consumers. Gut health. I think the first time I ever heard about gut health was in about 1994. You can now see that 2 in 3 consumers say gut health is key to achieving holistic well-being. So this whole idea of a holistic approach to health is really interesting. And now I think also looking at some of the other factors of the gut-brain axis is very on trend and on topic now. So we asked consumers, to what extent do you think the following health aspects are influenced by gut health? You can see immune, energy, sleeping better, mood. So again, this kind of very holistic approach to health is reflected here. And this product, Super Loaf, from a bakery in the UK, contains soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, also fermentable fibers. And there's a really nice story around that about how all this helps to support the gut health. So still, again, we heard about prebiotics, I think in 1994 for the first time. And it just takes a long time for consumers to really start to understand. So we did some research, and we were measuring familiarity of ingredients, which is on the x-axis, versus whether or not consumers said they're affected. So here we asked about ingredients for gut health, and you can see consumers are very familiar with fiber. They also think it is very effective, so that's really top right. And the size of the bubble is the number of food and beverages, the product launches that we have found that contain these ingredients for gut health. And you can see just following straight down the diagonal, followed by probiotics, then prebiotics, and on the watch list there is postbiotics. We're starting to see some of the suppliers in the industry talk more about postbiotics. But again, consumers need to understand, but as we've been discussing, there's lots of tools and different ways to engage with consumers around this. Back to the roots. So this is really thinking about local, but it's not just about local. But again, this is another trend that COVID has really amplified, but consumers are valuing the functionality, the freshness, also the authenticity of local food. There's lots of ways to do this. I was doing a sneak peek of the trends to a large multinational customer last week. And I said, if you're so big, it's really difficult to do maybe local at scale. But everything you do is local to somebody, somewhere. So there's lots of different ways to message around this. But back to this, we, again, look comparing 2020 to 2021. Consumers tell us what factors are important or more important. Over the past 12 months, freshness more important by 9 points. Flavor is more important. Nutritional benefit is more important. And just below that, you see, we also ask consumers if you have bought or sought more local produce in the past 12 months, to what extent do you expect to continue? And you can see much more and much more, those two green bars. Consumers are engaged with this. And there's lots of ways to do that. So here's just a couple of examples of greens are being grown in more places locally, but you can also take a very traditional product, modernize it a bit. And then it also, as I said, it was local to somebody in Mexico. So the tepache is sold in the US, but it's a Mexican drink. So I don't want to give the impression that there's only one way to do local. There's lots of different ways to talk about local. Looking at some of those strategies, it can be around a community. So the French have been especially good at this, really promoting their local specialities in their products. So here's a jam that's being sold and a lot of communication about where it's from. Fresh comfort food, so really just focusing on fresh Australian ingredients in these pies that are then frozen for people to cook at home. And then Barry Callebaut is now entering nutraceuticals. They have marketed the cocoa pulp, you can see called Elix there as a drink. So again, this takes a more naturally functional type of approach, but it really does highlight those three different things that consumers said that they value around local foods. Here's another one, amplified experiences. So this is the second trend that's really talking about, it's been amplified by COVID, of course, but consumers are very hungry for new experiences around their food. 50% say, I want to be a lot more adventurous with my food and beverage choices post-COVID. And just a few examples here, Unilever has created these the magnums there that are reflective of different parts of the world with these very retro looking travel posters there. And then after hard seltzer, we're seeing some other categories and these brands being applied in different ways. So there's a Coors Seltzer Orange Cream Pop Icicle, and Budweiser working with the UK's biggest, one of their biggest popcorn brands to have the official Budweiser popcorn. So all these things, if nothing else, they make your brand more interesting, and they certainly are a great way to grab some attention. A couple of more examples, we call this maybe kind of more wacky NPD, but here's for the 50-year anniversary of cup noodles, there's now cup noodle soda in 4 different flavors. And also consumers tell us that they like to try out new products if they're familiar with the brand. So just a couple of examples there. Dunkin' Donuts collaborating with Harpoon Brewery and the Snickers Cinnamon Bun. So again, if nothing else, it's a great way to do something limited edition to get some extra attention for your brand. And now trend number 9 is upcycling redefined. So again, we've been talking about waste stream and ways to do this, but now again, it's a nice commercial consumer opportunity. A third of consumers say a product that contains upcycled ingredients is more appealing to me than other products. And again, just some examples here that we now see the upcycle certification should have around 250 products by the end of the year. But we also see things like coffee grounds being upcycled to be used in beauty and personal care products and so on. We've seen a 54% growth in claims on packages that they are either dealing with food waste or upcycling. And again, we ask consumers what makes it better. If the product has upcycled ingredients, one is sustainability, which makes a lot of sense. Number 2, that there's some type of health benefit in these byproducts. And number 3 is freshness. That one kind of surprised me, but it is interesting to see the beverage there made with the fresh upcycled way. And then there's other ways to do this. Here's an example of a meat alternative also made from organic waste. I actually went to a food conference, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, and they served a salad from the peels from vegetables, and they made a hamburger from the pulp from a juice bar. So I've seen that before. So again, something interesting to do with all this that has a benefit for the consumer. And the last trend that I'm going to talk about today is my food, my brand. So I think we all know this now, that especially if you have young Generation Z people in your house, that your food is now a reflection of your lifestyle and also of your personal values. I know if I send my kids into the grocery store to buy a chicken or something, they come out with something that's got the highest animal welfare mark and is usually in a beautiful package. But here you see how important do you think values are when it comes to your diet. And you can see what consumers, more than 50% of consumers agreed with all of these: humanitarianism, inclusivity, and also diversity. And again, we really moved from a time when the food industry does not or should not be educating consumers anymore. And it should not just be about adapting to consumption patterns. It should also, there should be some type of reflection around consumers' beliefs and values to create that connection. We have 3 examples there that all do this. And then again, also, I think as anybody who's read the newspaper over the weekend, the Facebook papers and all the discussion around Instagram and so on, it's not a surprise to see that almost 50% of consumers say, I care about positive body type awareness on social media. This whole idea that we have to be perfect, it really does have to go away. I think it'll take time, but hopefully it does go away. But even for things like feeding your kids. So General Mills has launched a campaign around good is good enough. We don't have to be perfect. You don't have to make your own baby food and get up in the morning to cook breakfast for your kids. It's just not realistic for most consumers, but we also are not perfect. So Starbucks has also had a campaign around this. And it's just about, being yourself and loving yourself. But again, this also really ties into brand values and to that reflecting how consumers feel as well. So that's the end of our top 10 trends, but I just want to, I did this last year as well, just to talk about a lot of trends are interconnected. They also build over time. I don't want anyone to ever have the idea that trends stop one year and we get a fresh set on January 1st. But looking at the tech to table, so this really, it does reflect, tailored to fit was one of our trends last year around looking for the perfect products for ourselves, and also nutrition hacking, looking for that perfect product for nutrition. But this tech to table really does bring both of those trends together. There's a big influence that tech has on food in many different ways, not only the food that we're going to eat, but also how do we find it, monitor, and so on. And the same for plant-based. I think I showed that. We've had it on our trends for the past few years. And again, it just continues to evolve, and we're going to continue to track that. And also the shifting occasion is really built on the omni-channel eating that we saw really grow last year. And the year before, we talked about the right bite, of helping to find the perfect foods for the right occasions that also fit into our lifestyles. So thanks for watching. I hope everybody leaves with a bit of inspiration. I was very brave. I put my email address on there. I might not be the one to answer you, but I will certainly read all the emails that you send. If you are an Innova customer, you will be getting a lot of communication around where you can access all of this, and also the expanded report that we do. So thank you very much for